Thank you to our Patreon supporters! GBGuns and I do to level. Andrew P. Joseph, Serenity A. Algie, Peter A. Tom, Moises S. Fast Eddie, Talat 115, Brian B, Sky King Derek, S. Junior, Dollar H. Jenna I. Gray Kate, David F. Thanks for the triple level. David P. Kratos, Goodnod Slayer, Andrew Bealey H. Christopher JJS, Foreign in the bright fonts, Jeff O. Michael W. David G. Old Kai Tuba, Robert B. Ohio Gruffler, Steve Briscoe County Jr., Rich Richard, Ed Skywalk, Ed Z. Fierce, Seven Saints, Uncle Munzie, Alan B., Laura P., Andrew C., Tap to Johnny, Justin H., Brian K. Summer G. Keeping things honest level. Gary B. Leif S. Gary Neal D. Ed Z. JJ Brad M. George H. Othniel M. Cody W. Marcus. Such Head and Lewis R. Ed P. Logan G. Brian Kai RBMD 2020 2A. Gil B. Ron Z. Gort Mike NC Tech and Co. Home FMT. Ronald LW Russ P. Marvin T. GPC 1906. Robert C. Michael S.
Thank you, patrons. We had our votes, as we do over on the GBGuns Patreon page, once there's enough funding, and the FN Reflex XL won out, a gun that I didn't even know existed. I don't do a whole lot with FN. I did back when I was writing for the magazines, but now that I'm just an independent journalist and YouTuber, I don't hear much from them anymore. Coming up next, we'll do the tabletop review and field strip. So inside our blue box, we get the wallet. We've got our manual, our lock, an accessory booklet, that's rather thick, and a thing for activating the warranty. Now, if you're new to the channel, sorry, I go through the manual. This does two things. It lets us know how much the company wants you to understand the gun, and it tells my manual reviewers that when I field strip this thing, I'm not disassembling it. Well, I guess you could say it is a disassembly, but it's not building a gun, which is what the non-English speaking or poorly English speaking reviewers over at YouTube seem to get confused. I flipped through this thing earlier. It's got some good information. If you want specs, etc., check the pinned comment. I list all of that stuff on my site, because why waste everyone's time reading that when you can find it on any site? The images are the digital type, allowing them to color things as appropriate, although I've seen some great photos done with that. Everything looks pretty plain and simple. This is a 3.8 inch barrel, which is rather long for the micro compact. It's slightly longer than what you get with the SIG 365 XL. Here we have the list of which screws fit for mounting the optics. It is optic cut. And the question that I always get about ammunition is, will it take plus P? The manual says CIP and SAMI spec ammunition. Well, plus P ammunition is a SAMI spec, so it should be good. Now, at 3.8 inch barrel, you're slightly shorter than the SAMI spec ideal length of 4 inches. However, not terribly shorter. So do you need plus P or not? That's going to come down to the individual round. Get the box out of the way, we'll take a look at the gun. Opening the wallet here, we have 2 magazines. Now, this is supposed to be a 17 round gun. Somehow the company that ordered this from freaked out seeing my Oregon address and sent 10 rounders. That does not apply. We do not have a magazine restriction. There was one that some people tried to pass and it got struck down in the courts. So big frustrations to them. I'll be probably not listing that company in the article as a source since it's unreliable, and these mags are about 45 bucks a piece. So I went ahead, I had to order some proper magazines. I don't know if they'll be here in time for the shooting review, but I refuse to have a gun of this size and restricted capacity. Shame on that company for supporting things that restrict our rights. We do get an additional backstrap that adds some tang in there, and then we've got our screws and a wrench for mounting optics all fitting in here. Get this out of the way, and now we can get to the gun. Now, this little thing impressed me, and as I recall from my days of reviewing FNs for the magazines, they always had very nice fit and finish. A hint of utilitarian because they generally are making things for military contracts, or at least the guns I was reviewing were. But sharp looking guns. You can see this comes with a front night sight, which is a nice touch. And the reason the patrons chose this is it is, as far as we know, the only hammer fired micro compact gun out there. That's right, even though this looks, it has an internal hammer, you're not seeing it out there. If you look inside the slide beneath, you see that pocket, and we'll show you the hammer and all that when we get the gun apart. So, first things first, we have magazine ejection or release. A little bit of kick, I'd say ejection. Now, I don't know if the polymer end on these restricted mags is part of that or not. Another thing, and I understand why companies do it, but I hate it when a restricted mag is fully, truly restricted like this. If I popped this thing off and found a way to put a new base plate on, it would still just be a 10-round mag. I much prefer the more remediable limited mags, if you know what I'm talking about. I won't discuss further because YouTube will probably try to can me for that. We don't have ambi controls, it's just a one-sided magazine release, though it is reversible as indicated by the catch cut being on both sides of the magazine, and of course the shape matching. But we can see we're clear, and let's take a look at our quite a bit of play up front. People get upset about this. I still show it because it really doesn't matter. That play means there's room for grit and stuff to get in, but it also means there's room for the gun to still work when it's got some grit in it. And since your sights are going to be moving with the slide, having that move doesn't matter as much as having a tight barrel fitment. And I can wiggle the barrel slightly, but not terribly. So long as it's still pointing the right direction, we should be good. Notice we've got a bit of a bowl narrowing cut here. I notice this also works for pinching if you don't want to get on the serrations. I'd advocate, of course, always doing an over-the-top hand thing here. That is far safer than putting your hand near the front of the gun, but people do what they want to do. For a European company, it's surprising to not see texture on the front of the trigger guard. We do have a single slot of pick rail. I know folks like to see this filled with pick, but the fact is, if you put a slot back here, you probably wouldn't have any room for attaching a proper accessory. While we're here, let's do some trigger talk. Now, it's a hammer-fired gun. We don't have a manual safety. We don't have a safety on the dingus, and we do have a pivoting trigger. So what's it feel like? Light, slightly spring-loaded take up to a wall, and a crisp break like you'd expect from a hammer. Our reset is a bit long and takes you right in front of that wall again. So this is probably for the stroke shooter type folks that like to pull release, although the travel so far you can kind of half release and remain in contact with the trigger versus the trigger slap method. Texturing on the front strap is horizontal, as it should be. It's got the stepped squares we've seen on quite a few of the Turkish guns. This texturing on the side is the more modern, more aggressive texture that I've been seeing on a lot of lately produced guns, and they've included it up through here. Two schools of thought on that. One is, it's up there, it's a friction point when you're trying to get on the gun. I don't think it really matters that much. What it does do, however, is a good friction point for your thumb if you're firing one-handed. If you're firing two-handed, it gives you a friction point to put the meaty part of your palm against the gun to really hold on. We don't have memory points per se, but my finger reaches right to that spot. It's a good memory point, and I can get my thumb into that rail spot there, which is a trick I use to hold on to smaller guns. Not much beveling underneath, but we do have a favorite feature of mine, and that is the tail sticking out a little bit longer. Love that to index and insert a magazine. You can see on this gun that I've just now handled that it's working reliably. You just got to make sure you don't short it, because then you will knock that top round loose and then the mag won't go in the gun. You can see we have an interchangeable backstrap. Not allowed to show you that on YouTube, but you saw the second backstrap and it had more tang filling space. That would be useful if you have a problem with overreaching the trigger. You can see with my XXL glove size hands that I can get my first knuckle on the trigger if I wanted to. Is that really going to cause an issue for me? Probably not. I can just arch it a little bit. It's not hard to remember. Slide frame pit in the back. We've got all kinds of play. Again, I'm not too worried about that. There's our sight picture, serrated blacked out rear and a nice bright orange front sight, as well as an optics cut that you notice sits in front of the rear sight so you don't lose your rear sight when you mount an optic. Are you going to get a co-witness? That's going to depend on the optic. And do note that the loaded chamber indicator is a nice big hole, great for seeing if the chamber is loaded, also great for venting gas on the glass of your optic. I'm sure many of you are familiar with my stance on optics. I think they're a great aid for those with failing eyes and for newer shooters. They're also handy in competition. I don't trust them for carry. If you're going to do high round count, you might end up with gas jetting on here, but that's going to depend on the ammunition you're using, the temperature, relative humidity, the angle of the glass of the particular optic you're using. So many variables that I can't say it's an absolute. It's just something to be aware of. Next, we'll field strip the Reflex XL and take a look inside the gun. To field strip the Reflex, we're not going to use takedown pins. We're going to lock the side of the rear and rotate this lever here upward. Mine's a bit stiff, but that could be because the gun's new. And bring the slide forward and off. You notice that we did not have to touch the trigger during disassembly. Also, having to lock the side of the rear gives us another chance to check the chamber for empty and to eject anything that might be in the chamber. So that's rather nice. With that off, we can take a look inside of our frame. And you'll see things look a little bit different because that's our hammer. Now, one thing I noticed about this is it requires a lot of slide travel to recock that hammer. So there could be a potential issue with limp wristing or very weak ammunition. You want to make sure you're using proper ammunition. I have a chart over at GBGuns Depot ranking 24 115 grain 9mm range ammo loads, and there's more than a 35% difference in energy from one load to the next. Just because it says 115 grain FMJ doesn't mean that it's the same as the next box. When it comes to defensive ammo, most of it's pretty hot. What loads will this like and not like? We'll find that out when we do the What's for Dinner test. Inside of our slide, there's that big pocket that the hammer lives in. And I noticed that the firing pin is spring-loaded, which should help with resistance as far as drop safety and if it's going to hit. I don't think the gun could hit the ground hard enough for inertia to cause that firing pin to set off a primer. That spring has got some toughness to it. Take our slide further apart. We're going to take our recoil assembly out. It is a polymer guide rod, but you notice it's got two springs interwoven in there. Interesting short piece with metal on the end. Pop our barrel down, forward, back, and out, like any Browning action to get it out. And now we can see very clean, very nice machining. External extractor is another thing of note on here that I know some people are excited about. And that lever is our trigger safety that gets defeated by this bar here when pulling the trigger. Barrel has a bit of chamfering all the way around the chamber. Next we'll check chamber fitment. I'll be checking chamber with a piece of Liberty Ammunition Civil Defense. This is a nickel-plated case, which is corrosion resistance added. Great for a round like this that I handle all the time. You'll drop it in and listen for plunk, just like that. Now if you grip the brass and rotate it, you can feel if there's any burrs or nasty bits inside the chamber. This feels clean. And then when it comes to chamber support, you want to look and see what beyond that shoulder is exposed, and it looks like just a wee bit at the feed ramp, still the strongest part of the brass. So it's a fairly well supported. I can't say fully supported, but certainly better than say like a Glock. And that's important should you have a case want to fail and erupt. An unsupported chamber, like on a Glock for example, can send all of that force back here, down into the frame and into your hand. possibly ruin your gun, probably give you a bad day. When it's more or fully supported, then you're sending that force out the barrel where it should go to make sure that round gets out. As I reassemble this by simply inversing the assembly process, I'll tell you about what you'll see in the range video. You'll get my absolute first shots through the gun, no warm-up, no practice, no cherry-picking clips to show you guys the most awesome or the worst thing I want. The whole review is the shooting experience, and it's all on camera. First shots through the gun, full magazine +1, see how the gun runs fully stuffed. Take it over to the trademark What's for Dinner table to see what the gun eats by running 10 additional loads through the gun. Then over to the spinner for sights and trigger control. 5 shots from 7 yards for practical accuracy, and then give you my concluding thoughts. Now that part I was talking about with the hammer needing a full stroke, I'm going to go ahead and fire this. Let's say we go to there and come back. The trigger has not rearmed. We have to go there, past the barrel hood covering the frame, then it's recocked. And so my concern with that, you can see there's no primer in these are some dummy rounds, is, alright, chambered. You can see through that nice big window. Pull the trigger, the gun fires. Let's say you've got a limp wrist or soft ammo. Can we eject the next round? Yes. Pick up the next one. Fire again? Yes. Alright, so apparently the ejection length is also where the hammer arms. So that's a good indicator. If you don't get clear ejection, you probably didn't get the hammer armed. Smart FN, well done. Again, patrons, thank you for choosing this and also for funding this. I will get out to the range with it soon. See you guys there. And as always, for the full review, check the pinned comment at the bottom. That's where the full reviews are for all of my videos. Thanks for watching.